This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with Jose Hernandez. Hi, Jose. How are you?
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
Wonderful. Well, I am so excited to learn from you today. I was lucky enough 2 or 3 years ago to see your work in Philadelphia, and it's really amazing. It evokes so much emotion, and it's a communicator. It's language, basically. So could you tell us a little bit about your experience about how you started creating this incredible ascension art?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Kathy. That's beautiful. I'll share a bit of my story with you, and then I'll get into how the art became. So I was running some electrical lines, and it was Wednesday night, and the next day was Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
So we were like behind schedule. It was, we were on a major avenue in Miami, and it was getting already twilight, and we have to finish. We can't just leave it. And we decided to save a little time, that instead of going up and down in this bucket, we would leave the bucket up, and the guy would navigate very slowly and make sure he didn't electrocute me. So anyway, he didn't electrocute me, but he was kind of looking up, make sure I didn't hit a wire. That he kind of bumped into the side of a tree, and I hit the bucket, and I broke all the ribs in my right side.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of my journey, right? So wind up in hospital, and they give me this medication for pain, and they take me up and they send me home. And a week later, I'm not improving, so they decide that they want to change the medication and give me not only something for the pain, but something that might help with the inflammation. So they gave me an anti-inflammatory, and it's over-the-counter stuff. It's ibuprofen with the painkiller.
Yeah.
But it turns out I was allergic to the ibuprofen, and I couldn't breathe. I took the pill, and an hour later, I couldn't breathe. So I called the ER, and I say, hey, guys, I'm really struggling to breathe. And the doctor, says to me, well, Jose, you're all taped up. You can't take a deep breath anyway, so maybe it's anxiety. Part of it is anxiety because it happens to most people. And that made sense. So I said, oh, okay. So I continued to take the medication, and I was slowly getting worse and worse. And it was a process that took about a month and a half.
Oh, wow.
So I went past that. We had that. It was in 2000. So you had that Y2K where they were worried about the computers and everything. And I was completely housebound by then. I couldn't get up. I could barely breathe. I had to sleep sitting down.
Wow.
And anyway, it was January 5th. And it was at night, late. And I finally said to my wife, look, you got to take me to the hospital. I can't. I'm really struggling. And she took me to the hospital. And they put me in a one of the rooms in the ER, and they put an IV, and they were waiting. And so I told my wife, go home. She was with my son, and I said, go home, guys. I'll be fine. We're always fine, right?
Yeah.
And they went home, and I remember the ER nurse saying to me, look, Jose, here's your button. If you feel anything, just hit it and call for help. Anyway, I went through this 45 minutes of thinking, should I push this button or not?
Wow. Yeah.
And it's crazy, but it's just this guy thing that we have. And here I am, this guy, and I'm tough, and I'm like, we're supposed to be able to suck it up, and
Right.
So this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I'm doing, and then I'm telling myself, you're gonna be okay. Just relax. Try to relax.
Yeah.
So anyway, I finally hit the button. When I hit the button, it took about a minute for the nurse to get there, and that was like one of the longest minutes of my life. It felt like forever. And when she got there, she opened the door. She just looked at me and she just hit the code blue button on a wall. It didn't register in my mind.
Yeah.
All I know is that all of a sudden the room is getting filled with people.
Wow.
And I'm going to explain this how I experienced it. So the first thing that I'm trying to hang on to this sheet, and you have this gown they put on you, and there's nothing under that, and I just have this little sheet,
Yeah.
trying to hang on to it. And the first thing that I felt was shame.
Oh.
Because they stripped me down like nothing.
Oh.
And I was so weak, I couldn't hold on to that blanket, so I couldn't keep myself covered. And then they stick this board underneath me.
Oh, wow.
Hard board, and then they lay you on that. And anyway, they start running more IV lines, and I start thinking, what is going on here, right?
Right.
This is like well beyond what I expected. Anyway, the next thing I experience is I get this kind of like fear. And I start thinking about my family and my kids, and I'm thinking it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm in the ER. If something does happen, they're not going to be able to get here in time.
Wow.
And so I began to become very emotional. And so I can't breathe. And then I get this knot in my chest from emotion that was so strong. And my experience was that I was just free falling, like falling and falling and falling and falling. I couldn't stop it. And then I said, no, get a hold of yourself. You're going to be fine. And the fear was very profound. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in anything about the afterlife. I was very science minded, and that came because my mother was a devout Catholic. She was French and Spaniard. My father was half First Nation. My mother said, God is in this church. You go there and you pray and you get on your knees. And my father said, no, you never have to get on your knees. Just look out the window, and Creator is everywhere, right? So I'm like, how do you pick a side here? So I'm like, and I really enjoyed math and science as I was growing up. So I kind of followed that route. And I thought that science had the answer to everything. And one day they would disprove God, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I grew up with that, and here I am, and I'm so fearful, and I can't speak because I can't breathe. So I just want to hold somebody's hand. I want somebody to hold my hand. I could reach out and hold the nurse's hand because they were that close. And then I started thinking about my dad. He had passed 5 years ago. And my father, I grew up in the South Bronx. So his thing was, to be a guy, you have to be tough, callous, whatever. And I'm thinking, if he sees me, he will turn in his grave. And I cannot show any fear.
Oh, no. Oh, no, you did that to yourself.
I did that. And I'll tell you, Kathy, I actually felt my body tense with okay, I'm not going to show any fear. I could do this. And I became very rigid. And I couldn't speak anyway. So it's not like I could say, hey, guys, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But I could have reached out and taken her hand. And that became so profound in this experience.
Okay.
We don't realize how important that contact is.
Right.
To touch another warm hand and just to get the comfort that brings you.
Yes. Beautiful.
And so I didn't do that. And then I started thinking, this is only a few minutes. It took me about 5 minutes to die, but it felt like hours. And I started thinking, what if there is a God? What if I'm wrong, right?
I better flip both sides.
Yeah. So then I'm saying, you know what, God, if you are real, this is serious. I'm bargaining with God. And I'm thinking, God, if you're real and you help me out of this mess, I promise I will be a better person. I'll change. I'll do all these things, and I'll be kind of good, right?
Yeah.
How we kind of. Anyway, I waited a little bit because I couldn't breathe, and all I could hear was my
Oh
as
gosh.
I tried to get whatever air I could get in. And when you can't breathe, it's really interesting because it's not only about bringing air in. You take that deep breath. I couldn't get that spent air out.
Oh gosh.
So it's like you fill with used up air and you can't get it out and you can't get any air in. And your body gets really, from the struggle that you have. And anyway, my heart was racing and I could hear it on the monitor. So that thing go beep, 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 beep. And then it started to get very erratic and like sounded like a horse galloping. Boom, 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 and then it went crazy. And in my mind, I said, what am I doing? I knew God wasn't real. And
Uh-oh. You're dissing.
he didn't respond, right? I'm like waiting.
Hey, I need you right now. Drop everything.
We can't play around here. This is serious. Anyway,
Oh,
that
wow.
was what I felt. That was the response. Like my heart became very erratic. And then the entire event becomes quite surreal because you could hear that your heartbeat on a monitor and you hear all these alarms going off, right? And you got this crash team trying to keep you alive. And all of a sudden, you hear that thing go like this. Bop, 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 beep. In my brain, my mind is like, wait a minute. That's my heart. That's my heart. And I'm thinking, that means I'm dead. And they're doing compressions. They're trying to save me. They're trying to keep me alive. And I thought about my family, and it broke my heart because I thought I'd never see them again.
Right. Yeah.
And there's something to dying alone.
Wow.
And that room was filled with people, but I felt so alone.
Right. Wow.
And I started thinking, and I literally said this to myself, Jose, you had a real hard life. And I'm not quitting, and I'm not giving up. That's, the way I grew up, that's like something we don't do.
Right.
But I said to myself, but there's nothing I can do to change this chain of events. I can't stop this from happening. So I'm not giving up. But, I thought about everybody. I visualized them. Then I said to myself, you know what? It's okay to die. I did everything I could. I tried to do the best I could.
Right.
And when that thought crystallized in my mind and I said it's okay to die, I could see the door in the room.
Okay.
And it became really bright. And I saw a shadow there. And the minute I thought it's okay to die, that shadow moved into the room and it just walked around everybody. And it reached out and it felt so feminine, that energy. It was like an angel. She reached out and touched me. And it's crazy because she touched my foot. So I'm laying there and I'm looking.
Yeah.
And I go to the door. And she touched my foot. My toe, actually. And it was instant. I just felt this tremendous calm and this sense of peace and this inexplicable sense of love. It just overwhelmed me. And I could breathe.
Wow.
I could breathe. And there was this warm breeze that was just blowing. And I got long hair, right? So I'm visualizing myself as my hair is blowing in this wind. I mean, this is all in my head, right? And it was really profound in the sense that it was kind of lifting me and lifting me. And I could hear the IV drip, and it sounded like rain hitting a tin roof, like splash, splash, splash. It was so loud.
Wow.
And when I looked at the wall, I mean, you're distant, but I could see the grain in the wallpaper. And I was like so fascinated, like, wow, that is so incredible, right? My senses were so acute.
Right.
The next thing I know, I'm standing in the corner of the room and I'm looking at everybody, trying to save my life. And I looked at myself and I knew I was dead. And I said, that's me and I'm dead. But if that's me,
What am I?
then who am I? And that became one of the cornerstones of my life right now. Who am I?
Right.
I'm not this physical body.
Right.
And I hear this voice to my left, and she tells me, visualize your body as if it was a car. And that car has 5 million miles on it, and we just can't fix it anymore. And, I'm thinking, if I could call it that. But I'm saying my eyes are there, my brain is there. Everything that I need to be doing what I'm doing is dead in that body. So how is it possible that I'm doing this? I'm still listening to this voice, but I'm still kind of like trying to understand this.
Right. Right.
And I finally look at my body, and she says, you need to say goodbye to your body. And I'll tell you, this was the second most profound thing in this experience, because I looked at my body. And you know how we're never like happy with who we are, how
Right.
we're always so critical about everything, how we're always like put ourselves down so badly, and you're never happy with who you are. And you look through that lens and you think other people see you that way.
They don't.
And I looked at my body, and for the first time in my life, I felt so much love and compassion for who I had been.
Beautiful.
And I looked at that vessel, and it was a vessel. And I said, what a beautiful vessel that was. That vessel gave itself to me wholeheartedly. It just gave itself up to look at it where it is now. It's dead. It gave everything it could for me. And now it's just dead. And I found that so profound and so loving, that that vessel would do so much for me, and how, when I was in it, how I was so critical of it. Oh, you're too short. You're this, you're that. You're never happy. You never look good. You're always, something's wrong. And so
Beautiful.
it was like so profound. And then I start getting these little memories. And to me, this was my review. My review was very simple. It wasn't about the journey of my life.
Okay.
It was about appreciating it. It was about seeing a sunrise. It was about holding my little brother's hand. It was about seeing my children when they were little, and when they looked at me with so much love in their eyes, and understanding how perfect my life had been. And I was always worried about work and all these crazy things and trying to compete with the Joneses. And I was living a false life. And all that was always there for me. Taking a deep breath, listening to a bird sing. And that became so like important. And in this moment, I realized that 99.9% of my life was that. That 1/10 of a point that was difficult was just that 1/10, but that became everything. So I'll give you a perfect example of how that works. You go into work, you get a flat, how that ruins your entire day. Oh, I got a flat, I got to work late, and everything gets crazy. And you don't think about all those beautiful things that are taking place. And I realized that for most of my life, I didn't.
Right.
I grew up very poor, so I was always comparing to other kids why they got stuff and we didn't. And I made my life very miserable, very difficult. And it made me work very hard, and I was able to do a lot for myself. But those were all material things.
Right.
And in that moment, it taught me about all these experiential, spiritual things that were taking place in my life.
Beautiful.
And I had not 1 second to think about it. It was, what I got to do next? I got to make this call. I got to do this. I got to run here. And I loved that body so much for that opportunity. And I loved who I had been. So it was the first time I thought I was perfect, because we look at what's wrong with us in life. We never look at what's right with us.
Right.
It's easy to look at what's wrong. And that was that moment where that became so crystal in my mind. And then the voice said, okay, we got to go. And I started walking through that door. And then in front of me was like this big hole in the ground. It was really dark. And she's leading me right to it. And I fall into this hole. And I feel like this thing tearing these things off of me. And I hit the bottom, and she says, no, we got to keep going. And in front of me is another one of those holes, and I fall in. It's like a black hole to me. I'm thinking like a scientist, right? So to me, it was a black hole. And I fall in it again, and the same thing is ripping all this thing off of me. It was kind of a painful experience.
Wow.
When I get to the bottom, she says to me, Jose, you have to be pure when you enter this base. So we had to remove any negativity from you.
Beautiful.
That had touched you. So any memory that was painful had to be removed.
Wow.
And, it's kind of funny, because some people look at it and say, well, heaven is up. You kind of went down. And in my mind, it's really moving from one space to another. So how do you get to heaven? And I remember Bruce one day telling me about he had a conversation with an experiencer, and he was an auto mechanic, and how he, in his experience, went through a exhaust pipe in a car, and that was his tunnel. So the tunnels can be something that we might be familiar with, so that
okay.
I think it lessens the impact of it, so we don't. Anyway, we keep walking, and when I come out and she tells me that, I find that I am floating in the middle of a bowl. So if you imagine a basketball, and you're right in the center of it, and all around you is just color. And all these colors are moving, and they're laughing, and they're alive. And they're moving and shifting. And I felt so welcomed. I felt so accepted. We're always trying to be accepted in life, and we're trying to find people that embrace us and kind of, validate who we are.
Yeah.
And here I had all these colors just embracing every aspect of who I had been and taking me in with so lovingly. And I don't know if I was moving towards the color or the color was coming towards me.
Okay.
But I reached this point where I become immersed in it, and I am in the color. And all I hear is like a million voices talking to me at once.
Wow.
I can't hear one specific, but I hear this chatter like, shh. And I am so like in euphoria, so vivid. I am so full of life. And the contrast is, when I was dying, I said, I'm going to lose my life. And here I am like, oh my God, there's so much life here. It overwhelms where I came from. And the color was instructing me.
Wow.
And I don't know how to paint. I never painted in my life. So I would have difficulty doing stick figures even now. But it gave me a recipe, a formula, a blueprint, and it said, here, you're going to start painting on a black canvas. And explained why. It said, look in the sky at night, and you're going to understand this universe, this plane that you're in. In that blackness that you think is nothing, is all the ingredients to make everything that you see, every star, everything out there, came from that nothing. And that's where you're going to start. You're going to start in the beginning. Anyway, I have that experience that teaches me what to do, how to do it. And I finally move through it, and I come out on what I will call the other side eventually.
Okay.
Even though the entire experience is on the other side from the minute you leave your body.
Right.
And I saw this beautiful forest and these foothills in the distance. And I could see the shadows, that the clouds, they were so rich and dark on these mountainsides. And then behind the foothills were these mountains. And I could see this beautiful snow-topped mountain. Now, I grew up in New York City, and I lived always in urban areas, big cities.
Right.
And even there, I'm thinking, wow, what an amazing place, but not really familiar, right?
Right.
I
Right.
see all these beautiful animals running around, and it felt so free. And I had a thought, and I thought about my children. And I said, what's going to happen to my children?
Oh, wow.
And the voice said to me, not to worry, I could see them from there.
Oh.
And that made me just so filled with peace and calm.
Wow.
I embraced that, like, no question. Oh, I could see them from here. And then I realized I was flying. And I said, I'm flying. And she said, that's normal here. And I continue on this journey, and I began to experience what I would call oneness. So I got near a tree, and I could feel this tree's heartbeat. I could feel her taking nutrients from the ground and water, and I could feel her life. And I became this tree. And then I became a leaf, and then I became a bird. And I started to experience what all these things that we look at and we see here and take for granted, how they are so filled with life and how they are so loving. So I thought of the tree and how if it has fruit, it just gives us this fruit, and they'll do it every year.
Right.
And just give it. And with the hope that one of it will become another tree. But
Right. Exactly.
she gives it all to us, and so unselfishly. And she's not asking us for anything, because Mother Earth will bring rain and everything that she needs to sustain her. And anyway, I became everything that I saw, even the water, the air. And I had this experience of what it meant to be one. And I lost the identity of my body completely. I had let it go, and I said goodbye to it, but there was still some kind of attachment. Now I knew that I was so much more than my body, and I was a bit of everything. So I continue on this journey, and I begin to move up over this mountain. And as I look down, I could see the snow, and I love snow. And it was so beautiful. And I said, wow, this is so beautiful. And I looked up, and I could see the horizon, and I could see the sun on my right. When I look on my left, I see a cove, so it's like a U, and the most beautiful beach. And I look back to my right, and I see the sun, and I can feel this warm breeze coming from it.
Wow.
And I'm going to say in my mind, but it wasn't my mind. I thought, wow, this warm breeze is what's giving me this buoyancy, it's giving me this lift. And that's how I'm able to fly here. And as I look at the sun, it's like I'm looking at through a telescope, and I can see the solar flares just jump out of it. And it's so vivid and beautiful. And the warmth is kind of like calling me. If that makes any sense. And I look back to the left, and I looked at the beach, and I see a man knee deep in the water. And in one hand, there's one child, about chest high in the water. And on the other hand, he's got 6 other children in a chain. So they're like all in a line, holding hands like that. And I said, let me go down and check that out. So I go down, and as I begin to get close, and maybe I'm 10 or 15 feet
Right.
away, this man turns around. That was my father.
Yep. I knew you were going to see that. Cool. You got to see your dad.
And when my father died, I had to take him off of life support.
Oh.
And I'm the seventh child of 8, but I was always that guy that had to do all these difficult things. So all my older brothers and sisters were like looking at me in the emergency room when the doctor said, we need to do this for him. They all looked at me and said, okay, you do it.
Right.
It was a strange time because that was Christmas Eve.
Oh, gosh.
And I had to come back to the hospital in the morning to sign all the paperwork so I could take my father off of the life support. I did that. And it's bizarre, but I felt like I had stripped away his chance of living.
Oh, no.
Because we grew up with that sense, we fight, we never quit, right?
Right.
So I said, what gives me the right to quit for him? And I felt really guilty. And my younger brother showed up, incredibly enough, and he said, look, I'm here to support you.
Oh, that's nice.
So that was a very beautiful thing he did. And together we walked to the hospital. We went through this really guilty moments. And me and my father had a really rough relationship because he used to drink. He had 2 jobs, but come Friday, he went off. We didn't see him till Sunday, and he came drunk out of his mind. And it was a very, very stressful and bizarre time. And as I got older, I used to fight with him a lot because I used to stick up for my mom. So we were always bumping heads. And my father had this mindset of men don't embrace, men don't hug, men don't say they love each other. That's not what men do. And we never did it. So when he died, I didn't even say to him, you got cancer, you're dying, and I love you, Dad. I couldn't.
Oh, wow.
So here I am looking at him in his face. And I am so filled with joy because I am going to tell my dad what I couldn't tell him in life.
Oh,
And I just looked at him and I could hear him. He didn't move his mouth, but I could hear him. And we had this conversation of how we loved each other and how we cared.
beautiful.
And we finally embraced. And when I held my father, I became him.
Oh, wow. You stepped into him?
And I could feel everything he felt. And I was the first kid in my family to go to college. And we never talked about it, but now I knew that he was so proud and how much he loved me. And I realized how difficult his life had been. And there was this forgiveness that took place. And it was really strange because we forgave each other, but it wasn't really about that. The moment was about me forgiving myself.
Perfect.
And it freed me completely.
Beautiful.
We finally let go. And he looked at me and he said, Jose, you have to go back. It's not your time. And I'm looking at him like, you got to be kidding me, right? I love it here. I like this place. I do not want to go back.
All right.
And
Cleaning process. I don't have to go back.
and you know, it's really interesting because when I'm dying, I'm so fearful of dying and I don't want to die. Now I'm dead and I'm thinking, I don't want to come back.
Right.
So we have this conversation regarding whether I come back or not. And I'm saying, no. He's like, you got to go back. He looked at me then and he just held my face. And he said, let's make a deal. My father was always making deals. And he said to me, if you go back, I promise I will come and get you when your time comes.
Oh, beautiful.
And I looked at him, and that felt like the greatest deal in the universe.
Oh,
And I said, oh, okay, that sounds good. Anyway, I felt this pulling here, but it was really from my back. And then I wind up in body. I open my eyes, and the doctor that's doing the compression, she's like that, right? And she just got startled when I opened my eyes and she went back. And I could see the stress and the strain in her face.
oh, because she had been working hard to bring you
She
back.
was working. I was there for 5 minutes. And she looked at me, didn't say a word. What we exchanged was without words. And I realized in that instant, my thought was, number one, did I just get kicked out of heaven? Right? That's the first thing. I'm like, was I such a shitty person? Excuse my French, such a bad person that they just kicked me out of heaven? And then I'm thinking, what if she lost me? How would she face my family? And I know they would say, wait a minute, you're the doctor. You're supposed to save his life. What happened? You failed. How would she deal with that?
Right, right.
Anyway, they stabilized me. I'm intubated. My prognosis is you'll never leave this place alive.
Oh,
I was like that for 6 weeks. I finally started to improve, and I'm going to tell you and your listeners what I feel was so relevant to help me to improve. Now, they were telling me I had a progressive thing. The pills did something to my lungs, and they were like being consumed, eaten up.
wow.
And my option was have surgery and remove half of each lung and have a 50 chance of surviving the surgery, 50% chance, and maybe improving my life expectancy to perhaps 3 years from maybe a year and a half if I left the hospital alive at all. And I didn't want to do any more surgery. I was in there so long. And what happened was every time they hit a cold blue, now here you are, you're being told you're not going to live, you're not going to make it, take care of all your stuff. And every time they hit a cold blue, I'm thinking, that's going to be me again soon. And what I did, I escaped to that space where I was in the middle of that ball of color. And I could feel all those colors all around me. So nurturing, so loving, so welcoming, so embracing me no matter what. And I began to improve. So if you imagine cold blue, Jose is like, woo!
Yeah.
It's difficult because in this room, when you're in these ICU things, there's a lot of glass.
Right.
You could see someone come in a room and in 3 hours they lost their fight. And you bond without even speaking to that person.
Right.
Deeply. And you see that person move on, and oh my God, it's painful to you. You don't even know their name.
Wow.
And you see a lot of that. So visually it's traumatic, and then you're all drugged up so much, you're like
Yeah.
in La La Land half of the time anyway, right?
Right.
Right. They were giving me a lot of Ativan and stuff like that to keep my heart rate down because they didn't want another episode, right?
Right.
And anyway, I get out of the ICU in 6 weeks. I'm another 6 weeks in hospital. I lose 30 pounds. I come out of there, I'm like, I went in about 150 pounds. I came out 120. I could barely walk from one sofa to a chair. So I went through 6 months of just trying to get my feet under me. They do physical therapy, you're like, and I had like a hospital room at home. I had oxygen tanks. I had everything, right? I leave the hospital and when I could finally speak while I was in hospital, my cardiologist is there, and I said to my cardiologist, I said, look, I think I went somewhere, because I was really struggling with that, because I wasn't sure if I went in, if I got kicked out, if it was real, was it a dream?
Right.
And the doctor looked at me and he said, oh, Jose, forget about all that. Your brain is still alive for 2 minutes after your heart stops. And you release DMT, and we're giving you all these drugs to keep you alive, to help you breathe. It's not real.
Oh, wow. They're
Like it's all in your head, in other words. And I was already like, oh man. So I'm thinking, that feels so real to me. My mind must have broke. So I leave the hospital thinking my mind's broken.
oh gosh.
And I have to ask for therapy. So I go to see a psychologist, and I wind up during 5 years or 6 seeing 4 or 5 different psychologists. And it took me 2.5, almost 3 years to tell someone why I was there.
Wow.
Right? So you go to a psychologist.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're writing there, because I would not speak. I couldn't speak about it. It was like, I got there, I'm going to speak, I'm going to tell them why I'm here. And then I got there, and it was like my mind froze. I couldn't talk about that event. It was so, I was traumatized by
Right.
it.
Right.
The experience was so beautiful and profound and rich, but because I didn't know if it was real, I was traumatized. I was fearful. And I'm going to these doctors and saying, please give me a happy pill. Make this go away. And on top of that, I'm addicted to all these drugs when I leave the hospital.
Right. Of course. Because,
So I got to wear these really dark sunglasses because my eyes are so,
yeah.
it's, they're like my dilated. They're like, the light is so bright, I have a hard time. And I didn't realize I was addicted till the shrink said, you are addicted to all these things. We got to help you. It took 3 years to wean off of all these medications, but they did it.
Good.
And then one day I'm sitting on a sofa, and she was the youngest therapist that I had. And she sat on the sofa next to me, and magic happened. She took my hand,
Oh, took your hand.
and that brought me right back to the hospital. Right back to that moment where I was saying, I need someone to hold my hand. Please, somebody hold my hand. And I decided that I had to be tough, and I didn't do it. And I regret that I didn't hold that hand. But here, this miracle happens, and this beautiful lady holds my hand. And I cried. And I told her why I have been going to psychiatrists for 3 years. And she said, oh my God, this is not what is written, what I'm reading about you. They had all these things like, I don't know, because I didn't talk, I don't know what they were. She's like, they really miss this. And she nurtured and supported me.
Beautiful.
And one day something happened, and she couldn't see me anymore. And it had something to do with a child she had lost that was 2 years old. And she asked me about it, and I told her a vision that I had.
Oh.
And it scared her a little bit. And then she said to me, Jose, I just can't see you anymore because you know more about me than I know about you.
Oh, wow. It
And
scared.
I felt so bad because she cried. She cried for about 20 minutes. And I'm sitting in this office with her going, oh my God, what did I do to her?
Oh my gosh.
And she said, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I have this beautiful friend of mine that has a lot more experience. She was a very open, spiritual woman. And I'm going to bring you with her. So she did. And I started learning about how to deal with what I felt. She said, the miracle is that they didn't give you the happy pill. Because this beautiful experience that you had, this grace that is now part of your life, you would have lost it.
Wow.
And now what we got to do is teach you how to have one foot here and one foot over there. So she told me very clearly, if I'm too much on the spiritual side, people are going to think I'm crazy. And you will be medicated. If you're too much over here, you're going to lose that spirit, that connection.
The gift.
So how do we balance it? And together we started to work on it. And then I met someone that had worked with Dr. Grayson, one of the original psychologists that worked with him when they first got started in the 80s, 82, something like that. 80.
Right.
And they were going to have a conference in Florida. And they had 32 doctors and people that had experiences. And they were going to have a conference, and they invited all these people, but it didn't work. It was going to be in Bonaventure. And then they decided, since that didn't work, we'll meet in houses, and they broke up into groups of 8. So this is like in the beginnings of IANS.
Right.
It's not been a name yet. And she had been one of the pioneers. And she taught me so much about near death and the experience and how to embrace that experience. And she taught me, they all did in their own way because they all had input. And the input was, and let me put this into context. I get home, my wife looks at me and says, who the hell is this guy?
Right, of course.
I'm talking about spirit. I never did that. I was very science-based. And my kids are looking at me, and they'll look at me and say, where's the old Joe? Where's my father? And I'm like, oh, man. Who am I?
Right.
So I felt like I was completely detached from the world. I was isolated, completely alone. And I participated, but I felt like I was in a bubble.
Right. Wow.
Everybody was out here, and I'm out here. I'm communicating, I'm talking, but I'm not really there. And my wife one day, my ex-wife, she became my ex-wife. She looked at me and she said, look, I don't know who you are. You're not the guy that I married. And I can't be with you anymore.
Oh, no.
And I understood that. And I I could understand. I was so different. How difficult it might have been for her. And I said, okay, I got it. It's true. I can't deny that. And we parted ways. But anyway, the psychiatrist stayed with me, and I finally learned how to cope with this. Never got medicated. And I learned what life is about.
Okay.
It's about that moment when I saw my body and I said, wow, how beautiful it is to take a deep breath.
Beautiful.
How beautiful it is to see the sunrise, to feel the breeze, to feel Mother Earth under your feet. How beautiful it is to see other people, see them smile, see people hug, people laugh.
Beautiful.
And it made me love life so much. And I stopped looking at the world from a lens of everything wrong. In other words, I'm looking at it, I'm looking for what's wrong. And it made me look at it from a lens of what's right.
Okay, so I'm gonna direct us because we have about 10 more minutes. So I want to direct us so that people can understand. So once you get to a place where you have your foot in 3D and into higher knowing, you start painting. Do you want to tell us? Because I can see one of the paintings behind you. They're just absolutely beautiful.
And I'll share this. That painting is called Strand. And that thread that you see It's that thing that connects me to the source.
Oh, perfect.
So I'm always connected to the creator or God or whatever you want to call it. And I'll never get lost. And it nourishes my spirit, not my physical life, my spirit. And so I leave hospital. 3 years later, I'm finally, this beautiful psychiatrist held my hand, made me accept my experience, helped me to say, yeah, that was real.
Right.
Thank you, God. Thank you, Creator. Now, what do I do with that? How can I help other people? Now, I'm physically still broken, so I'm still on oxygen. I have to sleep with oxygen and everything. So it took a lot of years to get past that. And I was in and out of hospital a lot. So every year, if I caught a cold, it would be pneumonia. It would be really dangerous for me. I'd be in the hospital for 3 weeks or whatever.
Wow.
But I always came back. And then I said one day, these colors spoke to me and they told me to paint. Now, I have to honor that. And I have to paint. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do that? I sit there. I remember everything that was told to do, what I was told to do.
Wow.
So I took a canvas and I painted it black. That was easy. And then I started to add components to it. And the recipe was, you have to create this in a 3D plane. So ultimately I had to paint, take a picture, put it in a computer. And then paint, take a picture of it, put it on top of that.
Oh.
And that represents life. And how it represents life is like, think when you're 5, how different you are from when you're 10. And it speaks to all the layers that we put ourselves around us and how we insulate ourselves from life. I don't want to get hurt, so I'll do this. I fell in love and I got really hurt badly. I'm going to put this wall up.
Right.
And it speaks to all those walls that we put up. And then I had to add photos of life and the 4 elements. Now, might sound a little spiritual, but I had to add water. I had to add air. I had to add
Earth.
aspects of Mother Earth. And I had to add fire. And I went out and I started taking pictures of nature and capturing this. And because I'm part First Nation, we do ceremony, and I started taking pictures of the sacred fire.
Beautiful.
And I integrated all that in. And then I had to integrate a component of a journey. And we took a lot of road trips, so I have a lot of these beautiful photographs. When you're driving, you see these beautiful roads winding in front of you like a snake, and you're like, oh. And I didn't really know why, but there was a purpose in everything that I did.
Wow.
So even my training in engineering and everything like that lent itself so I could do what I'm doing. So here I am creating these paintings, and that painting has over 200 paintings, one on top of the other.
Wow.
And what it does is when you look at that painting, you're looking, in my culture, my father's culture, it represents my 7 grandmothers, which means I'm looking at my entire
Lineage.
cultural tree, right? Where I came from. But it goes way back to where it's not about my blood alone. It's about your blood, everybody out there's blood, how we all at one point are sharing the same blood.
That's right.
And how we come from that source. In other words, take them back to the beginning. And in there, when I look at that, I can't hide from who I am. And all my ancestors, all your ancestors are looking back on you.
Yeah.
Communicating. And it puts you in front of a loving environment. And because I believe color is alive, I believe that color is talking to me. And it speaks to me in a very subtle way. So I don't have the physical equipment to hear it like I did over there. But I know it moves me. And when I see something I like, all of us
Right.
say, oh, I like this one. And to me, that's so simple. you communicated, and those colors talk to you, and you resonated with that, and you go, oh, I like this one. And it speaks to everything around us, the colors we put on our walls, what we use to dress, how, everything is color based. So I'm looking at this world that's communicating with me from every aspect. So when I see somebody, what they wear is talking to me about who they are.
Right, right.
The colors, not specifically the clothes, but that tells me something about them. And I started working with these images, and when I light them up, they move. And it's almost like I saw it. I'm getting closer and closer to capturing what I saw. So I put a light on it. So you buy one of these, for example, and let me see if I got an image here, and I could show you real quick. So you get an image like this.
Uh-huh.
You can see it.
Yeah.
And when you light it, all these colors begin to move and change. And it's like I saw it. And it calms you very quickly. So I said, wow, that makes people feel calm, and that's what everybody's telling me. So maybe I could put this in the medical arena. So I started working with rehab centers in South Florida.
Perfect.
And I started working with the at-risk population. And when you go there for proof of concept, they always give you the most difficult clients. And so we did this inner immersion program that I do with art-based. So you color, and then it's really cool because at the end we all interpret what we drew. And what I found was that in the colors that they choose, they tell their story.
Yeah.
And so we would do a meditation with the art, and people opened up. And it got to a point where I started working with, if you can believe this, I spoke with Johns Hopkins, and I'm having some conversation with them.
Yes.
I'm working with the hospital here. They just approved having these pieces put in the hospital to do an incubator for research.
Perfect.
So we know that in the hospitals, in common areas, there's art, and it helps people to calm. Now we're taking it to the next level, and we're bringing it in the room. But remember, when I was dead, that color was talking to me. So we have what we call intelligent sculptures.
Okay.
And they communicate with you by route of the technology that we own today. So if I walk in there with my phone, there's a station, I put it in, tap it, it'll prompt to take me to a website where I could listen to meditations, I could see color move, I could just get away from the hospital environment and go somewhere peaceful. So if I'm going to go get my blood taken and I'm anxious, it gives me an opportunity to relax about it. And the idea is to create a better experience and maybe not get to where you're taking so many meds.
Right, right.
So maybe pain mitigation and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of exploration, and we're working with 3 or 4 different organizations. And I think that some retreats and places like that, where the idea is to help people overcome, PTSD and things like that. So I see a big future for this. So that moment of being in that bubble of art, of color, made me purposed.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me the why I'm here. We're all asking why we're here. I don't ask that anymore.
Yeah.
And the experience made me so complete and so whole.
Beautiful.
I don't need to search anymore. I am content. So if I was going to die tomorrow, I feel good. Not that regret that I had when I was my first experience. I just feel whole and complete. And I understand that God will bring me home.
Beautiful.
And when I get there, my dad is going to come to get me. And so I have total faith in that. But the art is engineered to help people feel better. I encourage people to go to the site and look at it. Create a sacred space at home. We call them sanctuaries. So in some hospitals, we're going to build a sanctuary space for patients and clients and their families. But then another space for all the caregivers, because I remember the face of that doctor that saved my life, and the anxiety and tension in there.
Oh yeah, they
So
Well, I wanted to let you know I worked for 3 years with a stainless steel company in Denver, and we were a member of the Center for Health Design, which I think is based out of Chicago. And they have a whole international contingency that designs hospitals, spas, and healthcare facilities. And color is one of their things. It's size, it's architecture, design. So you might want to get a hold of.
yeah, I'm actually going to show you something then. This is what
Wow.
the sculptures look like. This is a 26-foot sculpture that's going to be put here where we live.
Wow.
They started with this one piece, and now the city has given us 13 locations. This is stainless steel and glass. You see the art, it's lit, it'll move. The stainless steel gives it some protection, but it also is part of the sculpture, so hopefully it kind of...
So is it painted on the stainless? So they use like a car?
It's glass in the inside,
Oh,
and the stainless steel kind of comes up the side of it and protects it on both sides.
okay. Because
So
I could connect you with them and see if because they make custom stainless.
yeah, because I'm working with an aerospace company now, an airlines company actually, that does work with the stainless steel and things like that, and aluminum.
Okay.
So this project started a long time ago as this need to paint, and now we have an opportunity. So you imagine you're homeless. This thing will communicate with you. It'll tell you where there's a place for you to go to eat if you're hungry. It'll tell you where there's a shelter. If you're a tourist, it'll tell you, well, you're here. Here's another beautiful location in the city that you might want to go visit. So it's engineered to communicate in that way, in all those different ways, and allows the city to collect the data and use it to better serve their population, their community.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
So
Well,
that's what this has led to.
wow, that's so cool. Well, I know the feelings that emerge from looking at your art is amazing. And on your website, your is it called Inner? I'm going to wait till it comes around again. Innerimmersion.org.
Yeah.
That website, there was one piece that was kind of round, that was orange and red and black, I think, in the background. Do you know which one that is?
Yeah, that's called Earth Eye.
What is it?
Earth Eye. So just to share with you, that started with my grandson's eye.
Oh.
The first painting is his eye when he was about 7 or 8 months old.
Wow.
And it's a powerful piece.
Well, when I had a spiritually transformative experience, I saw those colors. It was black and those colors. And I have another friend who had an experience, but I saw it in waves, like a river, and she saw it in squares and rectangles, and she painted it. I don't know if it's acrylic or oil. And so when I saw it, it was like, oh, you've been to where?
Yeah, exactly. You knew, right? You knew. So I paint on glass, I paint on metal, and I paint on metallic paper, and then I put a resin finish on it, and I paint on watercolor paper. The reason I paint on glass and metal is because when you look at it, you get to see a reflection of you in it.
Wow, it's beautiful.
And it imports you into that space.
Right.
And that's why that is. So, and if you go to the website, you get to download a free meditation with an image. The one that you get to download is about love.
Beautiful.
And you'll see the colors change very slowly. It's about a 17-minute meditation, but the colors transition from the original to go through the whole gamut of color, then it goes back to the original.
Oh.
And you'll see that in a very slow way, but it is very grounding. And I love for everybody to go and kind of get it. It brings a lot of peace and calm. And I know from experience, I've worked with over 1,500 people one-on-one. And often it's a life-changing experience for many of them.
Well, if we could only remember that we're so much more than this and enjoy that and co-create with it, basically, that's the gig. So, Jose, I want to make sure that we tell everybody to come to Ions and see you. You are doing a talk on the role of masculine, something like that. What are you doing?
So I'm having a conversation about exactly that issue that I had when I was dying. Right? Well, you grow up, you believe being a man is something. And what that is really, because we have to be tough, we got to be, in my grandmother's culture, my father's mother, we would be the life takers, the males, and the women are the life givers. So the idea is we got to hunt, we got to be tough, we got to be whatever, right?
Right.
And what I find pre-experience is that I was losing touch with my own humanity by being that way. And how it is okay to cry and how freeing it is and how, I'm half my mother. And I have her genes in me. So it's okay to express what I feel. And so I'm talking with a retired RCMP guy from Canada. He's seen over 700 murders and things like that. He was the superintendent here where I live in British Columbia for the entire province. And the roles that these things play in our lives. I grew up in the streets in the South Bronx. So we're coming from opposite worlds, but the experience is the same. This is what it is to be a man. We got to be tough. We can't show emotions. We can't cry. We can't show fear.
Yeah.
And we're going to speak to that. So all these veterans that are struggling with PTSD and things like that, we want to address them. And maybe they won't come to this conversation, to this chat, but their wives will, their mothers will, their sisters will.
Somebody will.
Somebody will be there that could say, hey, guys, listen to this. And that's our hope, that we actually begin to change that paradigm that exists of what a man is and what a woman is. And you know what? We're all human beings.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I get hurt the same way anybody else gets hurt. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to express that. It's okay to be sad sometimes. It's okay to cry. And that's one of the things from my experience that I found. Even when I tell my story, it makes me so emotional.
Right.
Still, and it's 20 years.
Well, it makes sense. Your site's called Inner Immersion, and everything you're talking about is emergent. It's all about us being more of who we really are authentically, without fear. All of it is, that whole conditioning that we grew up with is the program that you have to see if it serves you anymore. It may not.
And women have to be a certain way. And I don't believe that's true either.
Right.
We're physically different, but emotionally we're the same.
Right.
And it's what we start doing to our kids when they're young that starts to kind of separate us. Kids are like very free about everything. They don't care who they play with. They play with girls, they play with boys, they play with any color people. And then as we begin to get older, we begin to be taught certain things that begin to migrate us away from those things that are so natural. And, I hope that conversation has that. I will be speaking with Kimberly Clark Sharp about the show we did on Netflix, The Surviving Death.
Oh, yes. I forgot you're a movie star, too.
Well, not a movie star, but been blessed with an opportunity to share the moment of forgiveness that I experienced when I was with my father,
Beautiful.
and how in life we have the opportunity to do that. So if there's someone out there that you didn't talk to for 10 years because of some crazy argument you had over a thing maybe that we can't take with us when we move anyway, reach out. Reach out. In the website, I have a program that speaks to that. It's called Dare to Dream Again. And the concept there is, what are the 20 most important things in your life that you value the most?
Beautiful.
And if I had to give them up one at a time, what would that sequence be? And you will find the most important things in your life and what they mean to you in that practice. And the idea is, what do I do about it now? I don't want to be like Jose, regretting
Wow.
even his belief in God
Right. Wow.
at a deathbed. I want to be there and say, you know what? I loved everybody. I gave all the love that God gave me, the Creator gave me. I left it here with people. And I hope they share and take it and do the same thing. And that's how I look at life now. It's very simple.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you so much. We're going to need to wrap up. The opportunity to learn more about Jose's work is to go to his website at immersion.org. And then Jose, is there any other way to reach you?
Yeah, I have, you could go to info@immersion.com and you can send me an email. I have a website for my art. It's called josehernandez.art@gmail.com.
Oh.
And, you know, I just want to send good thoughts out to everybody, blessings. And I say this, and not lightly. May love and light always find you.
Beautiful. Thank
You know,
you.
I know life is difficult often. I've had a lot of challenges. My near-death experience showed me what the other side is, and I know my time will come. I will be there. But knowing how beautiful and how filled with love and that place is, there's no words. I find the same exists here. And I ask you all to take this life and live it.
Beautiful.
Own it. Make it yours. And whatever love is in you, leave it here. If you need to say to someone, hey, I haven't talked to you in 10 years, but man, I love you. And I'm sorry about what happened. Do it. There's no shame in none of that.
Perfect.
And believe me, you will feel so good.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I also wanted to remind everyone that Jose is going to be speaking, I guess, twice at the virtual conference.iams.org, which is also on the banner below, and I will make sure it's in the information. And there's 100 speakers like Jose. So if you've enjoyed learning this and it's touched your heart and it would help you and your family to know what these people know, it's quite remarkable, the experience, the heart-opening experience of being with the Ions group.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to invite everyone to come. And thank you again, Jose. Thank you. This was delightful. Really.
And thank you, Kathy. You're a beautiful being.
Oh,
And in the conference, a lot of beautiful people. If you're a vet, you could listen to me and Randy and I for free. They've actually created an exception. So I hope that anybody that served in the military or whatever takes advantage of it. And it's also free in Canada. So if you served in Canada, the Canadian forces, you're able to take advantage of it. So reach out to IANS and you speak with Diane Cochran, and she'll get you going with that. And I hope that you enjoy the conference. And Kathy, it was such a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Your spirit is so beautiful.
Thank you.
It just shines right through.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. Thank you so much. See you soon on the event.
Take care, everybody. See